joining us from Greenlight Pod, our friend, two-time Super Bowl champion, taking final notes, getting set to have our chit-chat after Championship Sunday. None other than the great Chris Long. How you doing, Chris?
Rich, what's up, dude? How are you?
I'm great. My God, is there a million things for us to talk about today or what? You know?
Just two big ones. Love this time of year. I went home and played Madden last night instead of watch like games till 2 a.m. It's so nice to have just two games to break down.
That's it. But so much to break down from these games. Let us start with the AFC Championship game because I just went all in to start this game, to start the show on Brock Purdy, because I just wanted to kind of zag when everyone else, I'm sure, was zigging about Dan Campbell's calls, and we'll get to you on that subject matter. But what is your prime takeaway on the AFC Championship game, Chris?
Here I have written down, since you caught me taking notes on my yellow pad.
Well, you are a professional.
Kansas City's 10 to 15% better in the playoffs. I don't know. Some people knew that would happen. They had a better script. You could see it from the beginning of the game. They called better plays. They had a better game plan. Kansas City's defense outplayed Baltimore. They've outplayed their defense. They were the more disciplined team. You know, people can talk about those calls, but what calls do you think should have gone the other way? You know, like really, you go look back at those calls, their players putting themselves in positions that they shouldn't be in. Don't leave it in the ref's hands. Don't taunt L'Jarius Sneed. If you're Van Noy, don't headbutt. You know, like that's an automatic. I mean, like, you know, there's a bunch of penalties in this game that didn't go the Ravens' way, but a lot of them, they created those issues on their own. And then, you know, I think the better quarterback just won. Listen, I went through this with Josh Allen last week. I thought it was unfair for people to skewer Josh Allen with all the success he's had in the playoffs, 100 rating, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. The guy is not often the reason they lose in the playoffs. And, you know, I think it's such a visceral reaction because I think we've treated Lamar poorly, you know, as the media and fans, and we've really gotten on him when he's lost these games. And so I think some people think Josh skates, but the point is, whether you're Josh or Lamar, you ain't Patrick. You know, there's only one Patrick Mahomes. He literally defines this era of football. If you were born in a certain part of history and you're a great quarterback, your life is different because Patrick Mahomes exists. And, you know, I think whether it's fair or unfair, you could tell how many Super Bowls would Lamar or Josh be in if they played in the NFC. It'd probably be more than 0. But the unfortunate circumstances, this guy, Patrick Mahomes, is ridiculous. And the conversions early in this game were amazing. The one to Kelce on Stevens, you know, on that, I think it was the first drive on 4th and 2, which also told you both teams, the way they were going early in the game, were worried about the other team scoring, especially, you know, Baltimore going backed up and that sort of thing. But it was the conversions, and the most fitting conversion of all was the 3rd and 9 at the end of the game where, you know, some people say run the ball. I think in that situation, the seconds aren't worth that much. You can end it right here, right? And, you know, they got the man indicator, the robber safety. He's kind of checking on Kelce in the middle of the field at the sticks, and he sees the matchup with MVS that he likes. And if you remember back to the middle of the season when this thing really got snowballing for the Chiefs and people were like, they're not the same team, it was the MVS drop against Philly. And, you know, we've seen so many of these throughout the year, and people said it'll just persist through the playoffs. But I'd rather have that problem where you just got to catch the ball than the problems that a lot of these teams have. So, you know, and that played itself out. So MVS stepping up, Kelce getting to a new level. Guy looked like a shell of himself for much of the season. 11 targets, 11 catches. And they weren't afraid to run the ball, where Baltimore was scared out of it.
Why? What? That's because it does seem that Spagnuolo didn't just get in the head of Lamar. He got in the head of Todd Monken, it seems, because just 6 running back runs. I mean, Zay Flowers had 1 fewer carry than Gus Edwards or Justice Hill. I mean, Lamar had 8 carries. Some of them were designed, others were scrambles. How does that happen? What did you see?
I don't think it was a thing where he just said, hey, based on our alignment or our box counts, you're not going to be able to run the ball. I thought it was, And I thought Spags got a lot out of reinforcements in general. I thought, when you're down a Willie Gay, now Tranquil's had to play a lot of ball, but like somebody from that unit stepped up, and I thought Tranquil played really well. That first play of the game, he sets a mean edge. They're stingy on 3rd and 1. I don't know why, because Baltimore, the second possession, I think once they got a conversion on 4th down, they line up and run power, and they gash them for 14 yards. You didn't see that again until the opening play of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think just being scared off it, like just being spooked a little bit, coming out of the half and going, okay, we're going to reestablish the run game. And Justin Reed comes down, who played really well, and, suplexes Gus Edwards. And, the second play, it's a jet sweep, and McDuffie tackles. He's sure-handed. I think it's a terrible combination for Baltimore, and that's why some of us saw that this was going to happen, where it's like, okay, you have playmakers outside, but you got great tacklers on that Kansas City defense. You've got 2 guys outside that by the time Baltimore was trying to take shots against man coverage, they couldn't connect outside the numbers, because that's not something they've done really well against great teams, but also the fact that you've got Snead and you've got those guys in coverage. And I think every time they got something going, whether it was, catching Snead, running with an over, and you've got Zay Flowers on that long reception where he taunts Snead, they screwed it up for themselves, whether it was the taunting or the forced fumble where, you're not protecting the ball at the goal line, or they start at the 1 yard line in the second half. They got this great drive, and Lamar just chucks it into triple coverage. So they weren't as disciplined as Kansas City. If those teams played 10 times, Kansas City wins 7. I feel that strongly about who they are. And, it's not taking anything away from Baltimore. I just think we got a little out over our skis on that particular team, because Spags can make a bad matchup out of almost anybody.
So then I'll ask you the question I think many are asking today is how does Kelce do it? Honestly, because Steve Wilkes is going to circle 87. Everybody circles 87. Why wouldn't you circle 87 all week long? And then 87 just dominates.
Yeah, good luck. I think the Ravens probably, even if you thought Kansas City was going to win this game, you'd have thought somebody else would have had to make a bunch of plays.
Well, his first touchdown was on Kyle Hamilton. That's a first-team All-Pro.
It's a first team, and that's the bottom line, is like, eventually, if you're going to play aggressive and, you're going to man up on Kelce or whatever you do, unless you're going to bring extra bodies to the party, he's that dude for a reason. And, like, Kyle Hamilton's a great player already, and All-Pro, and deserves all that. But, like, those guys get beat too. And usually if they get beat, it's by Hall of Famers. And, there's something to that. This guy in the playoffs, he's got his hockey beard going. I feel like he's locked in. He said he wanted this game more than any game he's played in, and
I love it.
I believe him. And, it's the backyard ball between Mahomes and Kelce on that 4th down, or maybe it was a 3rd down, where Mahomes gets smoked and Kelce's on one side of Stevens when the ball's released, but then he gets around him and gets the other end. It's like, there's a reason these guys have been playing for, a decade. Like they know who each other are, and they know where they're going to be, and they don't have to say a word. And that's a connection that Lamar doesn't have that with anybody. Mark Andrews is the closest thing to it, but he's missed a lot of time. I don't care how bad Kelce's played relative to expectation. He's still Travis Kelce in the playoffs.
And then just the era of invincibility when the game was tied, because Lamar did have some dynamite moments to tie the game at 7 apiece. And then the Chiefs march 16 plays, including a 3rd and 5 where Mahomes scrambles for 9 seconds before flipping it to Kelce, who makes a remarkable grab to keep the drive going. And it makes you feel like, all right, this is never going to happen. And the game was tied.
And the bottom line is this, like, 2 great quarterbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a point you looked up in the first half and you said, hey, Lamar is their whole offense. It's the batted pass that he catches himself. It's him shaking off Chenal and all that stuff. Like, that's who he is, right? That's why he's the MVP. But one quarterback and one offense, because I don't want to put it all on Lamar. The game plan to me is a little bit suspect. One quarterback, one offense was willing to take a little chunk of flesh. every play. You know, it wasn't going to be a kill shot, but they were comfortable picking you apart. And if you're going to play off coverage, they're going to take the easy answer. They're going to run the ball. They're going to run it into down safety looks. They don't care. They're going to run their offense. And I think, like, you know, the flash and flare of the Ravens this year, but Kansas City, as bad as they've been, they know how to do that, and they know how to convert, and they converted the whole first half.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get to it. The Dan Campbell decisions, your 2 cents on it.
Okay, at first I was like, Dan, what are we doing? I just say this. The timeout to me is a no-no. Like, that to me is the thing that we should be evaluating Dan's performance on.
You mean at the very end of the game?
At the very end of the game.
Okay.
I hate that, because onside kick, not a high percentage play. You know, if you get 3 downs with a minute to go after a kickoff and a chance to maybe, you know, like if you get that 4th down, right, you get a chance to be kicking a field goal to tie the game, right? Like, unless I'm misremembering it, I feel gaslit by that timeout. Like, I was just like, what are we doing? Other than that, you know, the 4th downs, okay, you know, that's who you are. And to his credit, I looked at the second half again just 10 minutes ago. I think Detroit just missed their opportunities. Like, they had chances the entire second half to convert in these situations, whether it's Reynolds dropping the ball on 3rd and 9, whether it's you know, Goff being a little bit off on 4th and 3. You know, the plays there. You know, Dan Campbell didn't fumble the ball. Gibbs fumbled the ball. There was a point in this half where they came out and they were rolling. They were chunking them. It's 24-10. They get 3rd and 4. Warner makes a great play in the run game. On 4th and 2, Reynolds drops the ball. Like, these are plays that need to be made, right? And I know I've been on the other end of it, like where at the end of the Dallas game where I think Goff's been a little bit off, you're like, well, I know the play's open in the flat, but maybe don't trust the guy who's been a little bit off. But in this situation, the balls are on guys' hands, dude. Like, so make the plays.
I'm with you. Just a little pushback here, Chris, is it in the same way, you know, you don't want your quarterback flinging it into windows he shouldn't, just because that's what he does, right? That's his style. You're going to live with it. You're going to die with it. And sometimes you got to throw it away. You've got to live for the next snap. You got to live for the next half. You got to live
I
and
totally
take
understand.
points when it's right there. You know, a perfect example. If you remember when Favre threw the interception with the Vikings to
how can I forget? Yeah.
You know what I mean? To send the Saints to the Super Bowl, and Paul Allen, who was at the radio mic in Minnesota, said it right. He goes, "This isn't like Detroit, man. Like, this isn't like Week 6. You know, like
no,
this is the Super Bowl."
I understand. I understand, Rich. I wanted to jump on Dan for the 4th down calls, but the fact that Reynolds dropped the 4th and 2 and it's not a low percentage play, like that's a play they make all the time.
But why is it Reynolds? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
Why is it 14?
But
Where's 14? Why is it 8?
Paid. He gets paid too. He's open. You know, you want Goff to force the ball into coverage? I don't know. Like, here's my point. My point is this. If you got any issue with the 4th down calls, is the fact that before the half, it was good enough to go up 3 possessions. But the same thing in the second half was not good enough. And I think late in the game, you're thinking more about possessions than points. So in that situation, I might have kicked, but that's the way they do things. And Reynolds dropped the ball. You know, like, I can't fault Dan for that when the right play is dialed up, or Ben, or that sort of thing. The thing I can fault them for is, as a team, between the Gibbs fumble and their 2-minute drive, San Francisco had the ball for 13 minutes. They had it for 3 minutes. And that's the difference. And the difference between kicking a field goal in that situation for people, and part of this is hindsight, because if he catches the ball, they might go up 31-10 or whatever it was. You know, that's the side of it that Dan Campbell's looking at, is if Reynolds catches this can of corn, we're going to go up 3 touchdowns in the next 2 minutes of the 3rd quarter, and then the game's over. So I understand the attacking. I really do. You know, as bad as I want to second guess the guy, but at that point you go up 27-10, and the difference is there's 7 minutes to go in the 3rd quarter at that point.
Yeah.
It's tied at 24 with 3 minutes to go in the 2nd quarter, or the 3rd quarter. So in a 4-minute span, it flips because of the Gibbs fumble and a 3 and out. And, like part of it's hindsight, and you live and die with these decisions. And part of the reason they're here are those decisions. So I can't second guess that one as much as I can. The timeout to me is, I don't get it.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show. And, obviously quarterback-driven league. We got to focus on Brock Purdy and his performance. What's your
It was awesome.
I thought so, too.
He was awesome. Listen, the guy killed the Packers with his legs late in the game. And there's one play in particular in the red zone where, the Packers at this point, if they can force a field goal, you never know. But I think you end up running a TE and the tackle's in a shade. And it's just a really tough game to run. And Purdy sees it and he runs the ball down into low red, and the rest is history.
You're talking about the Lions, right?
I'm talking about the Green Bay game.
Okay.
So then you look this week, and he killed him in plus territory with his legs the same way. And that's the thing that people don't talk about with his game enough, is that to me is what separates him from a capital G game manager. That's why I call him a game executive, like most like really good quarterbacks in this league are. Like most really good quarterbacks, there's good stuff around him. I'm not going to hold that against Purdy, because in this game, this guy, he made huge plays. Whether they're conversions, circus throws. I thought in the second half they started to attack matchups like the Vilder, DPI, Ayuk on Sutton in the red zone. Like they started to get the matchups they wanted, and they attacked him. And Purdy was a big part of that. But Purdy tucking the ball and running, and no bigger situation than 3rd and 4 with 4:42 to go at midfield, and he tucks it and runs away from Anzalone down to the 28. He was huge with his arm and with his legs. So I got nothing bad to say about Brock Purdy on a day like today. Brock Purdy is part of the reason they're in the Super Bowl. You can say that confidently.
No question, because every single decision that we just talked about with Dan Campbell, with the exception of that run when you need to conserve every last timeout to have a shot at getting the ball back with no timeouts left and maybe getting a field goal to force overtime if you're lucky. Every single decision that Dan Campbell made that did not work out, Brock Purdy helped blow that door even further wide open. That 4th and 2, instead of going up 17. Yeah, there was that lucky moment with Ayuk, but then the throw to Ayuk in the end zone for the touchdown was outstanding. And then, the defense did take the ball away from the Lions the next set of downs, but he's the one who ran it into the red zone to set up McCaffrey. Yeah. He was terrific, Chris.
Yeah, it's a couple weeks in a row. Like I said, that's an underrated part of his game, the off-platform stuff. To me, that separates him from being, called squarely a game manager. Like, this guy, yes, he has good things around him, but to me, plays that are broken when it comes to the design of the play and they're not on time, like that's where, if you're a quarterback, you make plays off schedule, and that's what he did all yesterday, and he's done that a lot this year.
All right, your first blush, I'll ask you this next week when it's Super Bowl week, but that's it, Chiefs? That's your first blush? Yeah?
Yeah, I like the Chiefs, man.
Because the town where we're headed doesn't right now, which is kind of nutty. Where
are we headed?
Vegas.
Oh, they don't like the Chiefs.
Well, in terms of
Can't they say we beat the Super Bowl champs? That always feels good.
Yeah,
we beat them. Like we can build on that. Nobody says we beat the team that lost to the Super Bowl champs. If you're Vegas fans, maybe you want the Chiefs to win.
No, I'm referring to the town where the people who work in that town who set things like lines.
Well, they
and what
didn't
have
like the Chiefs last night. Well, they didn't like the Chiefs last night either. And I don't know what Vegas was doing hanging that 7 with the Lions. I know it turned into a backdoor cover, but obviously the Lions were the right side there. I also don't know what they were doing with the Chiefs. I understand, but it was like Vegas did not know that they were just as good as Baltimore. And I'm walking around last week and I'm feeling gaslit again, dude. I'm just feeling gaslit in general lately. I'm like talking to people that I trust and everybody's drinking the Baltimore Kool-Aid, man. I think Kansas City can win the whole damn thing. They're going to be able to run the ball. Like that was a game where they weren't supposed to be able to run the ball, and it was more of a part of their game plan than the Ravens. So they're going to be able to run the ball. They got the guys outside they can cover. They got good linebackers, which is a prerequisite. If you get Willie Gay back, I thought McKinnon is a huge part of what they do. And to get here without McKinnon, if they get him back, Willie Gay, you might get that safety back. I haven't really checked in on his status, but Edwards has been fine. And I think they're going to be loaded, ready to roll.
Chris, really appreciate it as always. Who's on your pod this week talking about championship action? Who do you have?
I wanted to get Aleem McNeil. He had a sack during the game last night, and I was like, oh, they're going to win. We're going to get Aleem. We're going to cash in on this, but now I got to figure out if we can get a Chief. So I'll work my contacts with my brother.
I'm sure you've got the contacts.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah, we had Spags on recently for anybody who wants to dig into the Kansas City defense. That was a couple weeks ago.
He's unbelievable.
He's my favorite.
He's truly one of the greatest, right? Was he your first head coach, Chris?
He was my second head coach. He was one of my 4 or 5 head coaches in St. Louis.
Okay.
Which goes to show you how hard it is to win in St. Louis. I mean, and I know head coaching is not being a D coordinator, but they ran him out of there. And man, I just think like with the runs he's been a part of with New York, the Kansas City runs where the defense gets better as the year goes on, and now this year, like the guy is one of the greatest.
Chris, thanks for the 2 cents. As always, we'll chat next week.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, that's the great Chris Long, 2-time Super Bowl champ. Everybody check out Green Light with Chris. And Kyle's on it as well. I just love talking to him. He makes me smarter. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.